Every morning, you get dressed without thinking. A shirt, a pair of pants, maybe a jacket if the weather is cold. It feels so ordinary, and it's easy to believe humans have always worn clothes. But for most of our history, we didn't. For hundreds of thousands of years, every human who walked this planet lived completely naked. So what changed? Most people assume clothes were invented because humans became civilized, or because they started feeling embarrassed. But neither explanation is true. The real story begins with an invisible parasite, a changing climate, and a scientific discovery so unexpected that it answered a question archaeology couldn't solve for over a century. And once you hear it, putting on a shirt will never feel quite the same again. Let's start with a mystery. Archaeologists have uncovered stone tools nearly 3 million years old. They've found ancient fireplaces blackened with ash, wooden hunting spears, footprints frozen in volcanic mud, even perfectly preserved mammoths with their last meal still inside their stomachs. But there's one thing they almost never discover: clothes. The first clothes humans wore have almost completely disappeared. Animal hides decay, leather rots, plant fibers break apart. Unless they're trapped in ice or preserved in an extremely dry environment, time erases them. For decades, scientists faced a frustrating problem. Everyone agreed that humans eventually started wearing clothes, but nobody could say exactly when or why. How do you date something that no longer exists? The answer turned out to be surprisingly simple. You don't look for the clothes, you look for the creatures that depended on them. Humans have two kinds of lice: head lice and body lice. At first glance, they seem almost identical, but they live completely different lives. Head lice spend their entire lives in human hair. Body lice don't. They hide inside clothing. They lay their eggs in seams and folds. They crawl onto your skin only long enough to feed before disappearing back into fabric. Without clothes, body lice can't survive. That raised a fascinating question. If early humans were naked, where did body lice come from? Scientists eventually realized they must have evolved from ordinary head lice, but that could only happen after humans created an entirely new habitat. Those tiny parasites became one of the most important witnesses in human history, because every generation leaves tiny mutations inside DNA. Over thousands of years, those changes slowly build up like pages in a history book. By comparing the DNA of head lice and body lice, researchers could estimate when the two populations split apart. The answer pointed to roughly 170,000 years ago. Not because the lice changed first, because humans did. Long before anyone found the first shirt, the insects living inside it had already recorded its existence. But the timing wasn't random. Around 170,000 years ago, the Earth was entering one of its colder periods. Temperatures dropped. Rainfall patterns shifted. Grasslands became open plains. Forests disappeared from places where they'd stood for thousands of years. For early humans, the world was changing faster than their bodies could. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors had lived mostly in the warm climates of Africa. There, bare skin wasn't a serious problem. The sun kept you warm. The nights were manageable. But eventually, small groups of humans began leaving Africa. They walked north into lands unlike anything they'd ever known. Freezing winds, snow-covered valleys, long winters, where exposed skin could become deadly in just a few hours. Unlike mammoths, humans didn't have thick fur. Unlike bears, we couldn't hibernate through the cold. And unlike Arctic foxes, our bodies couldn't grow a winter coat every year. Evolution works slowly, sometimes over thousands of generations. But winter doesn't wait, so humans did something extraordinary. Instead of changing their bodies, they changed what their bodies wore. For perhaps the first time in history, survival depended not on biology, but on technology. The animals they hunted became more than food. A deer wasn't just meat. Its hide blocked the wind. Its fur trapped warm air close to the skin. Its tendons became thread. Its bones became needles. Almost every part of the animal found a second purpose. The hunt didn't end when the animal died. In many ways, it was only beginning. Turning a fresh hide into something wearable wasn't easy. First, the skin had to be cleaned before it began to rot. Then it was scraped with sharp stone tools to remove fat and tissue. After that, it was stretched, dried, and often smoked over a fire. Only then could tiny holes be pierced along the edges. As clothing improved, something incredible happened. Humans started going places no human had ever lived before. Across frozen forests, over towering mountain ranges, into icy plains where the temperature stayed below freezing for months. Researchers believe these simple garments helped our ancestors expand across Europe and Asia, eventually reaching environments that would have been impossible to survive with bare skin alone. Every improved stitch, every stronger thread, every better hide, allowed humans to travel a little farther than the generation before. Without realizing it, they weren't just making clothes. They were expanding the limits of the human world. But somewhere along the way, clothing stopped being just about survival. It became something else. A message. Before you ever speak to someone, they notice what you're wearing. A business suit, a school uniform, a wedding dress, a doctor's coat. Without saying a single word, clothing tells a story. Many people no longer made their own clothes. Specialists did. Clothing became more than something you needed. It became something you could trade. Some fabrics became incredibly rare. Some colors became symbols of power. In ancient Rome, purple dye was so expensive that only the highest ranks of society could wear it. A piece of fabric no longer just kept you warm. It could reveal your wealth, your profession, or even your place in society. The purpose of clothing hadn't changed. It had simply grown. Today, the clothes hanging in your closet are unlike anything your ancestors could have imagined. Scientists are even developing smart clothing that can monitor heart rate, body temperature, and muscle movement. In a way, our clothes are still evolving, not through nature, through us. And that's what makes humans different from almost every other animal on Earth. When the environment changed, we didn't wait for evolution to rescue us. We invented solutions. We built tools. We passed knowledge from one generation to the next. Our greatest adaptation wasn't thicker skin, it was our ability to create one. So why did humans start wearing clothes? Not because we suddenly became civilized, not because we discovered modesty, and not because fashion existed. We started wearing clothes because evolution had reached its limit and human ingenuity took over. The first person who wrapped an animal hide around their shoulders probably wasn't trying to change history. They were simply trying to survive one more winter. But that single decision allowed our species to leave familiar lands, cross frozen continents, and eventually build the modern world. Tomorrow morning, when you button your shirt or pull on your jacket, it will probably feel like another ordinary routine. But hidden inside every stitch, every zipper, and every layer of fabric is one of humanity's oldest inventions, a second skin that has been quietly protecting us for nearly 170,000 years.